Monique did not have to. I didn't have to throw her out like she was garbage either. My baby was so precious to me.
They murdered Danny, and they shot Zachary, Toss, and Daniel.
I got out the passenger side, and they kept shooting. They just lit my... I get the bullet.
It was a very emotional morning in a Dedham courtroom. The man found guilty of killing a Weymouth police sergeant was sentenced to prison. Sergeant Michael Chesna's wife was in tears as the judge sentenced Emmanuel Lopez to life in prison. Did the victim's family get exactly what they wanted? Not quite, but it was close. They had hoped for the maximum sentence, which would have kept Lopez from being eligible for parole until he was in his 70s. Instead, the judge sentenced him to life with the possibility of parole when he turned 60.
A life sentence?
Cindy Chesna was overcome with emotion as Emmanuel Lopez received a life sentence for killing her husband, Michael Chesna.
I have never uttered the defendant's name, and I never will. That would be my breath. Because he is nothing. Nothing except living proof that evil does exist.
In a heartfelt victim impact statement, Chesna read notes from her children, shared with the judge how her husband's murder has caused her family 6 years of anxiety and grief, and spoke about the kind of person her husband was.
I want the defendant to know something that I hope he reflects on for the rest of his life. On July 15th, 2018, my husband would have helped him if he had just made a different choice.
A relative of Vera Adams, who was killed in her own home by Lopez's gunfire, described her as generous and loved.
Vera lived her life to the fullest.
The courtroom was filled with police officers, many of whom were visibly emotional during the sentencing. 2 officers who were at the scene that day shared how their careers were disrupted by the trauma of witnessing their friend's death.
Well, that we were the lucky ones to walk away from that horrific scene that day. But I can speak for all of us that a little piece of us died right there with Mike.
I've personally never been able to get past what occurred that morning, and I ask myself every day what I could have done differently to alter the outcome of the events that day. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't feel guilty about arriving there a moment sooner.
In a surprising turn before the sentencing, the defendant took the microphone.
I just want to say I'm sorry to Sergeant Michael Chesna's family. I'm sorry to the Weymouth Police Department. I'm sorry to Vera Adams' family. I'm so sorry. This should have never happened.
Lopez will be eligible for parole in 34 years. Since he was under 21 at the time, a new state law requires he be given a chance at parole. Chesna's mother says this is not sufficient.
Obviously, no sentence is ever going to be long enough for us because we're sentenced to a life sentence.
Emmanuel Lopez's lawyers asked for a lighter sentence because of his mental health issues. They also plan to appeal parts of the case, which has already been through 2 trials. The first trial ended in a mistrial because the jury couldn't agree, but in the second, he was convicted. A mother's raw anguish was on display in a Hennepin County courtroom during the sentencing hearing for Cedric Berry and Barry Davis, who were convicted of the murder of Monique Baugh. Her emotional testimony highlighted the profound impact of the crime on her family.
She should be here.
Monique's mother, Wanda Williams Baugh, delivered an absolutely heart-wrenching victim impact statement. Her daughter, Monique, was just 28 years old and left behind 2 young daughters.
My daughter came face to face with pure evil that New Year's Eve.
Prosecutors argued during Davis and Barry's trial that the men were targeting Monique's boyfriend, who had a conflict with a drug dealer on New Year's Eve 2019. To reach him, Davis, Barry, and some associates staged a fake horseshoeing event to lure Monique, a real estate agent. After using her to locate her boyfriend, they transported Monique in a U-Haul truck to a North Minneapolis alley where they executed her and disposed of her body.
Monique did not have to. I didn't have to throw her out like she was garbage either. My baby was so precious to me, to all of us. And I'm asking you, Your Honor, to please use your power to make sure they spend the rest of their miserable, insignificant lives in prison.
Before the sentence was handed down, both defendants maintained their innocence.
I hate you guys had to go through this, and I will always pray that the truth comes out.
Because justice wasn't served. They didn't prove that nothing to do with me with this shit. I do think they proved it. The jury thought they proved it. I think they did quite a good job of proving it, as a matter of fact.
Judge Peter Cahill did not waver as he handed down the mandatory life sentence.
There will be no possibility of release.
The only thing I wish I could have is my daughter back. And that's something I can't have. It's nothing I can get, but this is a touch of satisfaction.
There are potentially 3 more trials upcoming for the other suspects: the accused drug dealer, the woman alleged to have lured Monique to the house, and Barry Davis's sister. A judge denied bond for 2 teens involved in a shooting in Anderson County. One mother claims her son is a victim and shouldn't be jailed. One man is dead, and both teens are behind bars, with one of them injured in the shooting. Investigators are still working to figure out what happened.
They murdered Danny, and they shot Zachary, Toss, and Daniel.
Emotional words from a mother standing by her son. Zachary Tost and Carlos Jimenez were both denied bond in connection with the shooting at the Elmwood Apartments on Howard Lane.
You're the victim, sir.
They're the victim.
And this boy right here. They put him in front of us.
The shooting happened around 9:30 p.m. Police say Carlos Jimenez and Zachary Tost fired multiple shots into a vehicle.
He started shooting. He said, and they shot Daniel right in front of me. I mean, I saw him, his eyes.
During the shooting, 23-year-old Daniel Jimenez was shot in the head and chest, according to Anderson County Coroner Greg. Zachary's mother said her son was shot in the shoulder during the incident.
The vehicle pulled up with 4 individuals inside. During the investigation, it was found out 3 other individuals came out of an apartment with weapons.
Jimenez and Tost admitted to the shooting, and police say it was all recorded on surveillance video. They also mentioned that no one in the car was hurt, and all 4 people are cooperating with the investigation.
At this time, we're unable to determine if shots was actually fired from that vehicle or the shot that killed him was friendly fire.
The police report reveals that the 2 teens are both charged with 4 counts of attempted murder and having a weapon during a violent crime. A 19-year-old woman, Melanie Gayton, was sentenced to 8 years in prison as part of a plea agreement in an intoxication manslaughter case. Gayton hit and killed Monique Rodriguez, who was waiting for a bus while driving drunk on Culebra Road at Navidad Street. Rodriguez was heading to start a new job. Gayton entered a plea of no contest to a lesser charge of manslaughter. During the sentencing, Rodriguez's mother spoke directly to Gayton.
You took my daughter. Not only did you take my daughter from me, but you took her from her daughter, who was only 3 years old at the time.
Melanie Gayton is not eligible to appeal her sentencing in this case. Eric Rivera, convicted of killing former University of Miami football star and pro football player Sean Taylor, faced the judge seeking a reduction of his 57-year sentence. Under the law, Rivera is entitled to have his case reviewed because he was a juvenile at the time of his conviction.
Grown, and I believe, I know I'll be a productive citizen and help kids that are similar situations I was in.
He's the only defendant sentenced to 57 years, and that is not fair justice.
Jackie Garcia, Sean Taylor's then-girlfriend, became emotional when the judge denied Eric Rivera's request for a reduced sentence. She was present when Taylor was shot at his Palmetto Bay home during a botched burglary. More than a decade ago, 3 others were also convicted in connection with the case. On June 5th, Mark Howerton was found not guilty of murder in the death of Kaylee Mandotti from 2017. However, the jury did convict him of aggravated assault causing serious bodily injury, a lesser charge. 3 weeks after the trial, prosecutor David Luton said that Mandotti's family is relieved to finally get some closure in the case.
Now the news now, 20 years in prison. That is the sentence that a jury handed down this afternoon to Mark Howerton. Back on June 5th, Howerton was found not guilty of murder in the death of Kaylee Mandotti back in 2017, but the jury did convict him of aggravated assault causing serious bodily injury, which is a lesser charge. After the trial 3 weeks ago, prosecutor David Luton said that Mandotti's family is relieved to finally get some closure in the case.
Mark was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Everything was going smoothly at the late-night DJ at 75 Center Street until some patrons were asked to leave. This led to a brawl spilling outside the establishment. Southington police say the situation could have ended much worse. The trouble began inside just after 1 a.m. when bouncers tried to escort 3 people out onto the sidewalk. Things quickly escalated, resulting in 2 of the 3 bouncers being stabbed and 3 people arrested.
Anything to say your side of it at all?
No comment, sir.
Just after 1 a.m., an altercation broke out involving the 3 people who were arrested and another customer. After some words were exchanged, bouncers intervened to escort them outside, and the situation escalated from there. Police took over from that point.
Once they got him outside the business, they attempted to get back in by pulling their way back in through the door.
In the end, 3 bouncers were injured, with 2 of them being stabbed with a weapon known as a shank, which resembles an ice pick and is often used for self-defense. Police say 24-year-old Heidi Montez of Wallingford first used pepper spray on the bouncers, and then allegedly stabbed one of them in the face with the shank. Investigators report that as bouncers were trying to remove the 3 individuals from the premises, Montez then stabbed a second bouncer in the head and neck.
They described the injuries. Essentially, she came very close to catching some serious arteries in the neck that could have caused, obviously, much more extensive damage.
Heidi Montez's brother, Adrian Montez, from Springfield, Massachusetts, is also in court. Heidi Montez is being held on a $200,000 bond, while her brother's bond is set at $25,000. Heidi faces charges of assault, resisting arrest, interfering with an officer, and breach of the peace. A third suspect, released on a promise to appear, was let go. By day, the area has a quiet, small-town feel with a beauty shop, insurance office, and a furniture store that's been in business for 98 years. The owner says that problems tend to arise when the sun goes down, particularly next door.
I'd like to see them close earlier at night so that you don't have people who are drinking and driving and endangering other people, and also, you know, that their behavior would be a lot better.
Surveillance video capturing the entire incident exists, but the police are not releasing it. The 2 bouncers who were stabbed have been informed that they are expected to recover. For the first time in the murder trial of former Border Patrol Supervisor Juan David Ortiz, Ortiz showed emotion. Accused of the 2018 murders of 4 women in Laredo, Ortiz broke down during a phone call with his wife from behind bars. The jury did not see this because the phone call was conducted outside their presence, as Judge Oscar needed to determine whether it would be admissible in trial. In the call, made just over a month after Ortiz's arrest, he spoke with his wife and children from Webb County Jail. During the conversation, Ortiz put his head down and began to cry, with a bailiff handing him a tissue. He expressed concern about what he had said during his interrogation.
I'm very concerned over the statement that was made. There is no evidence. It's just a confession I made.
He went on to say he planned to ask his lawyers to suppress the video of his confession, but the confession was played in court. In the end, the judge decided to redact part of the phone call, but the jury was allowed to hear a portion. After this testimony, the state rested its case, and the defense, having called no witnesses, also rested. Keona Mouton, who was accused of luring a Lamar High School student to his death in 2018, has been sentenced to 23 years in prison. Police have described the crime as a gang-related hit. During the sentencing, Dylann Mack's mother delivered a powerful victim impact statement from the witness stand. Her emotional words, including, "I hate you, look at me, you disgust me," were directed at Mouton, who was a teen at the time of the crime. Mouton lured Mack, who had a crush on her, into an ambush that led to his death. The courtroom was devoid of cameras, and Mack's family has endured 3 murder trials and 3 convictions related to the 2018 gangland hit. Dylann Mack had transferred to Lamar High School in hopes of escaping gang violence, but his family says he only portrayed a gangster on social media and was not involved in gangs. Prosecutors presented deleted incriminating text messages as evidence against Mouton. During the victim impact statement, the Mack family remained seated with their heads down, overcome with emotion. A furious Dylann Mack, who was present in the courtroom, stared Mouton down and declared, "Don't you dare cry. Those shackles on your ankles? That's Dylann Mack." Gavin Ramsey apologized during his sentencing at the Medina County Common Pleas Court for strangling his elderly neighbor. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
I wrote this down because I knew I wouldn't know what to say on the spot. I don't know how to explain why all this happened. I don't think there really is I don't think there really is an explanation to begin with. I think about it all the time. And I would take it back in a heartbeat if I could. I feel terrible for what I've done. And I would never do anything like that again. I'm so sorry for what I did. I constantly live in regret and shame because of it. I wish I had the words to express how sorry I really am.
Thank you.
An Albuquerque man is in custody after being arrested for shoplifting, only for officers to discover he was also wanted for murder. Jamil Lewis, once referred to as one of the most dangerous criminals in Albuquerque, was one of the first individuals listed on the Albuquerque Police Department's original Metro 15 list in 2019. With an extensive criminal background, 26-year-old Lewis is behind bars again. In July 2018, Lewis was arrested in connection with a carjacking in a downtown neighborhood, during which the victim was shot at more than 20 times.
I got out the passenger side and they kept and they just lit my. I get the bullet.
Lewis was never convicted in the carjacking case after the DA's office stated that sworn testimony confirmed he was not at the scene. The charges were dismissed. Police responded to a shoplifting call. After chasing the suspect through the aisles, they arrested him and discovered it was Lewis. They then found out there was a warrant for his arrest in connection with a murder. Since the 2018 carjacking case was dropped, Lewis has one conviction for felony drug possession but did not serve significant jail time. The district attorney's office has announced plans to push for Lewis to remain in custody until his trial for the murder case. This incident revolves around Zachary Cohn. In August 2017, in Iowa, the lifeless body of Sterling Cohn was discovered in a swing, where he had been for 9 days after his death. The police investigation led to the arrest of Sterling's father, Zachary Cohn.
Born to him and his living girlfriend, Cheyenne Harris, was a son. They named that son Sterling Kane. That child, Sterling Kane, was born on May 1st, 2017. And this is a photograph taken of him on July 15, 2017.
Which exhibit is that?
This is Exhibit 96, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, the defendant and his living girlfriend welcomed this child to their home. They lived in a small town in Chickasaw County, Iowa, a town of about 400 people. The town was Alta Vista. They lived in an apartment. That apartment had 2 rooms, 2 bedrooms. It had a living room, it had a kitchen, and it had a bathroom. You're going to hear from this child's maternal grandmother, Randy Harris, who took this picture. She will tell you that through that summer, she watched Sterling from time to time on the weekends. Sterling was healthy, he ate properly, she cared for him. She loved little Sterling, like the grandchild that he was. He was beginning to smile. That grandmother, Randy Harris, will testify the last time she saw little Sterling alive was on August 5th, 2017, where they went to a little town festival called Wapsie Days, a little community in Northeast Iowa. Ladies and gentlemen, when the defendant was granted the blessing of that child, he was also granted a responsibility. Sterling, little Sterling, was as vulnerable as only an infant could be. He was completely dependent on everybody in his life that cared for him. The defendant, his father, and the other caretakers. Little Sterling couldn't feed himself. He couldn't change his diaper. He couldn't regulate his temperature if he was cold or hot. He couldn't put clean clothes on. He couldn't make sure that he was safe. If he needed medical attention, he got it. He was vulnerable as only an infant can be. And ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show that this defendant, this father, whose responsibility it was to care for little Sterling, failed in his responsibilities. He failed. The evidence in this case will show by his actions, he directly caused Sterling's death. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence in this case is going to show that little Sterling was placed in a swing in an unheated, stuffy, hot room in that apartment, that he was left in the same diaper for at least 9, maybe 14 days. He was left in that diaper full of stool, such that it attracted bugs, flies that laid their eggs in that diaper, which eggs hatched into maggots while Sterling was alive. And those maggots were in his clothes and in his diaper, feeding on the feces in his diaper. And he laid in that room, in that diaper, between 9 and 14 days. And the evidence will show that that stool in his diaper irritated his skin, such that it ruptured the skin and his bodily fluids came out. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence in this case is going to show that Sterling died of malnutrition. He was under 7 pounds at almost 40 months of age, on the 5th percentile in the Grower chart. He died of dehydration because he wasn't fed. He didn't get water or hydration through milk, and because of his injuries. And ladies and gentlemen, he died of diaper rash. That's right, diaper rash.
Kids are different. When you get a kid, it's different with kids than it is with adults. For me, it is. It heightens your it heightens what you're thinking.
I'm gonna back to you. I'm gonna turn that volume down just a little bit. Thank you. Can everyone hear okay right now? Yep. Okay. Proceed, Ms. Timberson.
So you received this page, you get in your car right away? So yes or no?
Yes. Sorry.
When you're driving to the address, you were sent to 107 South Hilltop in Alta Vista, correct?
Correct.
Apartment number 7.
I missed apartment number 7. Yes, and so I turned my flashers on. I know we're not supposed to do that as an emergency. I'm just, because I use my own personal car. We are not supposed to turn our emergency flashers on when we're going, but I was going, and yes, I got there. And
on the way there, what are you thinking? You said that it's different when it's
so I'm thinking when there's no different than up at work when, you know, when you're taking care of a kid, you're thinking worst case scenario, what are you going to do? What's going to happen? What are some causes? You know, things like this. And so I'm thinking respiratory, you know, SIDS. I'm thinking I'm going to do CPR, you know, going over how to do basic life support, you know, CPR.
Why don't you just pull the microphone back a little ways from there?
So it only took you a few minutes to get to town?
Yeah.
When you pulled into town, you said you had some trouble with the address. How were you able to find where to go?
There was, the streets run north and south. I missed the apartment 7 number because that's, if I would have caught that, then I would have known where I was going. And so I was going through, pulled up, I called back to the sheriff's office to get the address again, approximately at the same time that I met up with the mailman, Tina Shoddick. And so at the same time that I was on my phone, he said apartment 7, and she was over here saying, what address are you looking for? He told me apartment 7, and so then I just left and went there.
And Tina shot it, you know her?
Yeah, neighbors. I mean, yeah, neighbors. You're in a farming community.
All right, so you determined the address, you went there.
Yes.
What did you do when you pulled up?
Well, pulled up, I saw a man and a woman and a child, and got out of my car and went running towards them and said, "Where's the baby?" They didn't show any emotion or expression. And then the man said, "Inside." And I said, "Show me." And so he took me inside and we walked through the living room, and then he took me to a back bedroom, and it was dark and hot. It was stuffy. And I was looking for a crib and I couldn't see anything. And I said, "We've got to get some lights on in here," because you couldn't see anything because it was dark. There was it was dark. And so he flipped on the switch and the lights came on, and then as he was walking away, he muttered something, which I didn't hear. And then I turned and
That's okay, so what, he flipped the lights on for you?
Yes.
Did they ask to meet in a particular location?
Yes, they did.
Who set the location?
The couple did.
And where did you meet with Mr. King and Miss Harris?
At the library in Osage.
And your report says you met with him at approximately 2:45 p.m. on September 1st, 2017. Is that what you recall?
That is correct.
When you met with Mr. King, the defendant in this case, can you kind of describe his demeanor or how he was acting?
What I recall in the interview, his demeanor presented as that he was laughing throughout the contact that I had.
You say laughing, what do you mean?
That he was laughing in response to our discussion that we were having.
And this was 2 days after the death of his son?
That is correct.
Did you find that unusual?
I did.
Why?
Typically when I meet with families who have a child that suffered maltreatment, they're not laughing. They're either frustrated, they're angry, or they're upset.
And it was so unusual that you noted it in your report, correct?
Yes.
I want to talk in particular about some of the information provided you by the defendant, Mr. King, and only Mr. King. I'm not asking, so please don't volunteer any statements made by Ms. Harris, okay?
Yes.
Did you ask Mr. King to describe what had happened to his son?
Yes, I did.
What did he tell you?
He explained Sterling's death as SIDS.
As SIDS?
Yes.
And do you know what SIDS is?
Sudden infant death syndrome.
Was he able to provide any other explanation for his son Sterling's death?
No, he did not.
Was he able to identify how often they were feeding their child Sterling?
Not specifically, no.
Was the defendant able to identify the last time that he fed or Sterling was fed a bottle?
I don't recall that Mr. King identified a specific time that he had fed his child.
Was Mr. King able to provide to you any time or any identifying parental care that he had provided to his son Sterling?
I don't recall any specific information from Mr. King.
Did you ask Mr. King if he was using any illegal drugs?
Yes, I did.
Why did you ask that?
As part of our assessment, we talk about mental health, substance use, past maltreatment, the home environment, and specific information regarding the child.
Let's start with the mental health. Did Mr. King identify any concerns with his own mental health?
No, he did not.
He didn't claim he's had any mental health issues?
I don't recall him specifically identifying any mental health.
And if he had, you would have noted that in your report, correct?
Yes, I would have.
And it's not in your report, is it?
It is not.
Now, you also said that you asked him about substance abuse. What did Mr. Kane, the defendant, tell you about his illegal drug use?
That he had used methamphetamine.
Why would the department be concerned with a parent using methamphetamine?
Methamphetamine affects how adults parent their children.
How?
It affects their ability, such as if they're using methamphetamine, they may have paranoia, they may have irregular sleep patterns, which results in neglect to a child. They may be irritable. In some instances, they're actively using, they're not able to make inferences, including not focusing on relevant information, just generally poor parenting skills.
And did Mr. Kane tell you how often he was using methamphetamine?
What I recall in my report is a couple of times a week.
Did Mr. Kane identify whether or not he provided any drugs to Cheyenne Harris?
He did.
What did he say?
That he gives Cheyenne his leftovers from using his methamphetamine.
He said that Mr. Kane's demeanor during his interview was unusual because he was laughing, correct?
Yes.
You also described in your report that he was dismissive, didn't you?
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
When I would ask him questions, he would refer, why don't I ask law enforcement? Because he'd already talked about it. He wasn't willing to necessarily discuss things in detail without more prompting from me.
State of Iowa versus Zachary Kane, verdict form, count 1, read the jury and find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree. Count 2, read the jury and find the defendant guilty of child endangerment causing the death of a child. Defendant may be seated. Mr. Garauzo, do you wish to poll the jury? No, Your Honor. State have any reason to do so?
Yeah, Your Honor.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, your services here are completed. Thank you very much for your time and your attention throughout this matter. I will come back shortly if any of you have any questions for me. I know that Mr. Merton and Mr. Phelps are in the courtroom and may want to talk to you as well, just about your deliberations. But again, this has been a difficult week, and I sincere gratitude and thank you for your service. All rise once more. Be seated. I will set sentencing in 4 to 6 weeks. This is a non-bondable offense. Then will remain in custody pending sentencing. The order is PSI. I believe we can do sentencing in Chickasaw, can we not?
I'm sorry.
We can do sentencing in Chickasaw County, and that's what we will do. I don't think we have to return to Henry County to do the sentencing portion of this.
No, the state agrees with that. And I think also we can not do the PSI, but we do it in prison as well.
Because it's non-discretionary. Okay? So I might even set it a little sooner if your schedules. If you two want to coordinate, give me a date. It's be on a Tuesday. Well, we don't have to do it on a Tuesday. We can take it off our court calendar if we have to. So, okay. All right. Anything else from the state? Mr. Garauzo.
Zachary Cohen was sentenced to life in prison for the neglect that led to his son's death. This tragic incident revolves around a woman named Cheyenne Harris. In August 2017, in Iowa, law enforcement discovered the lifeless body of Cheyenne's child. After an investigation, the police arrested Cheyenne for this terrible crime. A child's safest haven is typically with their mother, but can a mother ever neglect her own child enough to cause harm?
Ladies and gentlemen, the actions of the defendant that you'll hear in this case will show that she placed little Sterling in the back bedroom of that 2-bedroom apartment in Alta Vista. She placed Sterling in a swing, one of those mechanical swings that swings back and forth, a baby swing. She placed that swing against the wall in a dark, unlit room that was hot and stuffy with no air movement because it was August. The windows were covered. And ladies and gentlemen, the evidence in this case will show that Sterling laid in that swing, he laid in that room in a diaper that hadn't been changed in as many as potentially 14 days. Somewhere between 9 and 14 days, his diaper hadn't been changed. The evidence will show that Sterling laid in that same diaper, filled with feces and soaked with urine, such that the feces attracted flies. They're called scuttle flies. They were attracted by the feces in his diaper. They laid eggs, those flies, in his diaper. And those eggs hatched into maggots, and the maggots began feeding on the contents of little Sterling's diaper. You're also going to hear evidence in this case that when he laid in that diaper in that room between 9 and 14 days, that little Sterling's skin under his diaper began to rupture. That the integrity of his skin was lost and began to slough off. And you're going to hear, ladies and gentlemen, that was because the contents of his diaper became like sewage. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence in this case will show that little Sterling died of malnutrition. He weighed at the time of death under 7 pounds at almost 4 months of age. He was on the 5th percentile in the growth and weight chart, not where he was supposed to be. He died of malnutrition because he wasn't fed. He died of dehydration. And you'll see his body was dehydrated. The soft spot in his head was sunken in because he was dehydrated, because he did not receive fluids and formula or milk. He was dehydrated. And he also died, ladies and gentlemen, of diaper rash. Diaper rash. And I told you the evidence will show that his skin was ruptured and began to slough off. That allowed the bacteria that was in his feces, E. coli bacteria, to enter into his system, into his bloodstream, and cause an infection. Malnutrition, dehydration, infection caused by E. coli bacteria. That's what caused Sterling's death. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence in this case will show that the defendant, Cheyenne Harris, was a stay-at-home mom, that she was in that apartment. Ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake, the evidence in this case will show that Sterling suffered in the last hours and days before his death. His body racked by fever from infection, feeding on his body's fluids, on the contents of his diaper, laying in urine and feces, soaked clothing. And at that time, his mother wasn't out of state. She wasn't across town. She was in the next room in that little apartment, ignoring his cries, ignoring his basic needs, ignoring her child, who lay in the swing, unloved, uncared for, and unaided by his mother. Ladies and gentlemen, evidence in this case will show that her actions were unexcusable and they rise to the level of murder in the first degree and child endangerment resulting in death. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not the time to talk about the law. At the conclusion of this case, the judge will tell you what the law is, and you'll have to follow that law. But suffice to say that under our law, felonious child endangerment under certain circumstances qualifies as murder in the first degree.
Were you able to find the residence right away?
No, I missed the apartment 7, so the streets Hilltop goes north and south, so I was looking for the address on the north and south Hilltop, when in fact, and I had to call back in, and at the time that I called back in, I saw Tina Shoddick, who's the mailman. She was stopped, and at the same, and it was summertime, I had the windows down. At the same time I was talking on the phone to get the address again,
then Tina was right there. And when he said apartment 7, then I knew where to go because I know those apartments.
And the apartments are somewhat in a block. It's a complex, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you were just unsure which side of
Yes.
the complex to go to?
Yes.
And you said you ran into Tina Shattuck. Do you know her?
Yeah, she's a neighbor, yes.
All right, so did Tina help you get to the right address as well?
She at the same time that when I called back in, it came over. He said apartment 7, and then I just took off after that.
You arrived at the apartment.
Yes.
What did you do?
So I pulled up, and I pulled right up, and I saw a man, a woman, and a little girl, and I got on my car and I went running up to them and said, "Where's the baby?" Nobody was showing any emotion, and the man goes inside, and I said, "Show me." And so he took me inside. We walked in and we went to the back bedroom. He took me to the back bedroom, and it was dark and it was stuffy, and there was a stench of urine there. I was looking for a crib. I couldn't see a crib. I said, "Where's the baby?" And he said, "In the swing." And it was dark. I said, "We've got to get some lights on in here. Turn the lights on." And he flipped the switch and the lights came on, and he walked away and he muttered something, and I don't know what he muttered.
What did you see when the lights came on?
Well, you could see the swing. It was facing an outside wall in the corner. And so then I went over so I could see Sterling, the baby. Found out that's what his name was. And to do my assessment, look, listen, and feel, his eyes were fixed and dilated, staring straight out. He had around his mouth, and I went to check a brachial pulse on him, and his arm was stiff and rigid and cold. All of his extremities were cold. His little feet were cold. His hands were clenched in a fist, and he wasn't breathing, and his clothes were like crusty.
When you saw Sterling, did you know that there was nothing you could do?
Yeah, there's no CPR. It's it just wasn't right.
Was he in clothing or blankets?
He had clothes on. The clothes that was on his chest was crusty. He had a blanket that was draped over him that was wet. And when I brushed up against that, when I touched that, there were bugs that flew from that.
And what did you talk about with Ms. Harris?
We were talking about the storm. She was upset that her boyfriend Zach had gone and left, and she was stuck in the middle of the storm. She had said that she felt the tree hit. It shook her bed, and woke her and all up, but it didn't wake the baby up. And at that time, I was like, "You have a baby." I didn't know she had a baby.
Was the baby outside with Ms. Harris?
No, sir.
And you said that's how you learned that she had a baby?
Yes.
Now, when you were outside with Ms. Harris, Where was she in relation to her apartment?
At that time, during that conversation, we were on the corner of her building.
Was she within earshot of the building where her apartment was at?
At that time, yes.
Now, where was the baby during this conversation?
I'm assuming she left him inside and the baby.
How long was Miss Harris outside with you while the baby was inside?
About 20 minutes to a half hour.
Did Miss Harris have any baby monitor or any other device that she could use to monitor the baby in the apartment?
No.
Where she was at when you were talking to her, could she have heard the baby from the apartment?
Maybe, maybe not. We weren't on the corner the whole time.
You were outside, right?
We were outside, yes.
How long was Miss Harris outside, did you say?
About 20 minutes.
When she told you that she had a baby, did you ask her about the baby?
I did.
What did you ask her?
I asked her how old her baby was, and she really couldn't tell me the date. She specified that the baby was born on the 1st of some month. I can't remember. I want to say May.
Okay.
May or something like that. But she said I can't keep them straight, but she had the baby in the upstairs of a friend's house.
Okay. Now, after meeting Ms. Harris at the convenience store and talking to her outside a few weeks later when the storm hit, did you ever meet her live-in boyfriend, that's the defendant's live-in boyfriend, Zachary Kane?
I did.
Or Cohn, excuse me?
Yes.
And when did you meet him?
I met him, I want to say about a week or two after the storm. He was outside listening to music in my boyfriend's van.
So you said that the storm was in the early part of July. Would this been a few weeks later, so maybe the middle part of July?
Something like that. Yeah, something like that. I'm not 100% sure.
And so how was it that you met Mr. Cohn?
I went outside to talk to my boyfriend, and he was in there, and I introduced myself to him and told him he had a really cute daughter, that she looked just like him.
And was that Nala that you were talking about?
Yes, sir.
Did you also offer to look after Nala if needed?
Yes.
Why did you do that?
It seemed like Cheyenne needed to maybe get out of the house. She seemed kind of sad every time I seen her.
So you were offering assistance to help her?
Yeah.
Now, how often would you see Cheyenne?
Not too often. Outside every now and then with Noah. Otherwise, she was inside most of the time.
So your observations were fairly limited, is that right?
Yeah.
Were you asked to babysit the children that same day?
Yes.
Who asked you to babysit the kids?
I believe it was Zach. I'm not sure 100%. Yeah, pretty much. I think it was Zach.
And so, which kids did you babysit?
I babysat for Noah and for the baby Sterling.
And who were Nala and baby Sterling's parents?
Cheyenne and Zach.
And Cheyenne was the mother, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, how long did you babysit the children?
The first time it was about 17 hours.
About 17 hours?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time you'd met Mr. Cohn, correct?
Yes.
Same day?
Yep, in person.
And you had met Miss Harris twice before?
Yes, I had spoken with her twice before.
Now, I want to ask this so the jury understands your own experience caring for children. Do you have your own children?
I do.
How many children do you have?
I have 2.
And have you raised them to adulthood?
Yes, sir.
Have you cared for other children during the course of your life?
Yes.
Sterling, did you watch him at your house?
Yes.
Would you have him for a few hours, a few days? How did that work?
It depended on what was going on at that time, whether I got him and Nala overnight, and I never took just one. It was always both of them. So, if we had something going on, I'd take him for like the day, or take him for overnight. I always preferred overnight because I just liked as much time as I could get because my grandma.
You liked having the kids at your house?
Yes, I did.
What was Sterling's feeding schedule?
When he was hungry,
How often was that?
it varied. It was just whenever he wanted a bottle, he'd let you know, and we just got him. I never, figured I needed to wake him up every 2 hours or any of that stuff.
Did he have any problems eating?
When he was first born, he did. He had issues with sucking in his bottom lip and latching onto the bottle. But that went away quickly. He figured that out once he pulled out his lip. He figured he got more food out of that.
And when you say that went away quickly, that went away?
It was like the first week or two, and then he was able to latch on fine.
And no problems after that?
No.
So he ate fine?
Yes.
Did he eat a lot?
Basically what any other child does, he ate about 4-ounce bottle at that time, just depending on whether it was his morning feeding or whether it was his night feeding or whether he was just wanting a snack,
And you've raised your own children, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And from what you're saying, it was just a normal baby eating at normal feeding times?
Yes.
What about his diapers? Did he have normal diapers?
Yes.
No issues there?
As far as going to the bathroom and stuff, no.
On any of the times that you cared for Sterling, did you ever see any health issues with him?
As far as health issues, no, I didn't see any health issues.
Was there a time that you observed a diaper rash?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, that was when he first come home. He had a mild diaper rash. Wasn't really healing up. We changed diapers and wipes because now I've been allergic to certain wipes, and Cheyenne had as a child, so we tried those and then used the med on it and stuff and changed out the wipes, and it went away. It got better. So
So if you used the right wipes, it was fine?
Yes.
Did you use things like A&D ointment and stuff?
Yeah, ball necks, things like that.
And doing those things, you said it was right away that happened, so was that when Cheyenne was still at your home?
Well, it was within.
I think you mentioned in your interview something about Sterling not bulking up. What did you mean by that?
He wasn't getting chubby like Nala was. She was a real chubby baby, and Sterling, he wasn't bulking up from that. And I heard that he was just stretching out, getting taller.
Well, when you say that you heard he was just stretching out, where did you hear that from?
From Cheyenne's mother.
Did you ever talk with Cheyenne about the fact that Sterling wasn't bulking up?
Yes.
Did she express any concerns to you about that?
No.
When you were talking with Agent Turbot, you mentioned something about a friend or a friend with a child who died of SIDS.
Yes.
Did you say in high school?
That was in Riceville.
During the last couple weeks of Sterling's life, or during the month of August, did you ever hold Sterling?
No.
Why not?
Usually he was sleeping, and other times I was not to disturb him, as he was a colicky baby, and they're just super hard to get to sleep.
When you say you were not to disturb him, what do you mean by that?
Like pick him up out of his swing. I could go in and look at him, but he was usually covered in blankets. You could see his little head peeking out.
Now, on the weekends, you were home some of the time, correct? You didn't work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Did you ever interact with Sterling? I'm talking during the month of August. Did you interact with Sterling at all on the weekends?
Yeah, in the earlier parts.
The last couple weeks of his life, did you interact with him on the weekends?
No, because of when he was sleeping. There was one day that I went in and he was reaching up like this, and I put my fingers in his hands and he grabbed them.
Why didn't you go in and play with Sterling over the weekend?
I was usually asleep because of usually the double loads and the hours that I worked, and plus the substance abuse. I was usually pretty tired.
Did Sterling ever come out of the room? And again, when I say ever, I'm talking during the month of August 2017. Did he ever come outside of that room?
Yes.
How did he get outside the room?
His mother would go in and shut the door and take him out of his swing, and I assume change and diaper him, and then she would put him in the car seat because usually we were going out to eat or something. She'd put him in his car seat and then bring him out in the living room where I would be with my daughter.
When he would come out in the car seat, was he covered in a blanket at all?
Yeah, from here down.
For the record, I believe you indicated about mid-chest.
Yeah, mid-chest down.
At any point during the last couple of weeks of Sterling's life, did you try to interact with him more than you've described?
Yes, there was a few times.
What happened when you tried to interact with Sterling?
Again, I was not to disturb him as he was sleeping usually. He slept a lot when I was awake, I slept when he was awake.
When you went into Sterling's room, well, let me ask this. Was there an overhead light in that room?
Yes.
Did you use the overhead light when you went in there?
No.
Why not?
Because the way he was laying, he would squint at the light, so we figured that was probably hurting his eyes. So we used a lamp in the closet. The closet door is open, so we just put a lamp in there on the deal to keep it off the ground, and that lit up the room, you know, mildly. It wasn't directly in his eyes or anything like that.
So at any time in the month of August, do you recall turning on that overhead light in that room at all?
When he was out of the room.
Did you ever turn it on when he was in the room?
No.
When Sterling would come out of the bedroom in the car seat, did you ever notice any odor?
I did.
What did it smell like?
It was a weird smell. I mean, it almost smelled like vomit, and yeah, so I would, you know, shy away a little bit from it.
Did you ever check what the source of the odor was?
I did. I asked about it.
Who did you ask?
His mother.
Did she say anything about changing diapers?
No, there was a different explanation.
Despite the sensitivity of the case, the jury bases its verdict on testimony, evidence, and the nature of the crime rather than on emotion.
The court has been advised that the jury has reached a verdict. Mr. Foreperson, has the jury in fact reached a verdict? Have you reached a verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
We're going to hand the verdict form to the court attendant, please. Defendant, please rise. State of Iowa versus Cheyenne Harris, FECR 011490. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree. Count 2, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of child endangerment causing the death of a child. Mr. Foreperson, is this the verdict of the jury on both counts?
Yes.
Mr. Hawbaker, do you wish to have the jury polled?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you may be seated. Court attendant is simply going to read your name and ask if this is your verdict, so that each of you will then confirm that it is in fact your verdict. We're just confirming that it was a unanimous verdict. I have mine in the other room if you want me to get it. Hang on.
Big thanks to our viewers for joining the courtroom journey with us. Your interest in the stories of justice is what keeps our channel alive.